We took it all. We brought them to our land. An endless night, ember hot and icy cold. The rage of the earth. We made this curse. Carved it in the blood on our backs. We did not see. We could not, but she did. And in the end...
What will I become?
Senua's Saga. Hellblade 2.
Play it now with Game Pass.
In 1999, director George Lucas and star Liam Neeson gave the world a stunning new entry into a galaxy we all long to return to. And 10 years later, everybody lost their crap and decided they hated it, even though when it came out, it had mixed to solid reviews, even getting a 3.5 stars from famed movie critic Roger Ebert. But I digress.
In 2024, we try a rare whiskey from a non-distilling producer.
The film is Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace.
The whiskey is Calumet 14-year single rack black label.
And we'll review them both. This is the Film and Whiskey Podcast.
Welcome to the Film and Whiskey Podcast, where each week we review a classic movie and a glass of whiskey. I'm Bob Book.
I'm Brad G.
And I suppose it's that time, Brad.
Bob, I am so excited for this episode.
Can I ask one question, Brad?
You can ask as many questions as you want, Bob.
Why? Why are you excited for this episode, Brad?
Because I love this movie, Robert.
Folks, today we are reluctantly, some of us are reluctantly, diving back into the world of Star Wars for the first of what seems like, 8 more times this season. We are dipping our toes in George Lucas's pool. And folks, I don't know what temperature the water is. It seems to agree with Brad, but it's a little too cold for my taste.
It's a beautiful, 104 degree jacuzzi. Just chilling.
Is that what you really want?
life.
Is to just chill in a jacuzzi with George Lucas?
Yes, I would kill to do that, Bob. That would be so much fun. Just have a beer with George Lucas. Oh,
Brad, I have been thinking about this episode for a minute now because I watched this movie, 5-6 days ago. I've had a good long time to sit and reminisce and ruminate. And
when's the last time you watched it?
5 or 6 days ago.
Before that?
I watched it during COVID. I watched all the Star Wars movies again during COVID because, like with some of the other classic films in the American catalog, I don't like them that much. And I keep thinking that, everyone likes these, so it's got to be something wrong with me. And maybe that thing will reverse itself someday. And so I keep trying. It's like with 2001. I keep trying. And alas, Brad, I am just allergic to the Star Wars. So I've been thinking about this for a long time. And I think, Brad, what I would like to do today, with your permission, is I would like to reverse our rules today. Not in terms of I'm not going to do Brad Explains or anything like that, but I'm very aware that I talk a lot, Brad. And I think that the split of talking on our podcast, instead of being 50-50, it's like 65-35. I talk much more than you.
I think it's more like a 67.
Yeah, I was going to say 70-30, but I'm trying to temper expectations a bit. I do that because I feel very passionately about the movies we talk about. And I, frankly, am not that passionate about this movie. Now, I will also say up front, I'm not coming into this as begrudgingly as I thought I would. I think there's a lot to like in this movie, and I don't feel antagonistic towards it. I also don't feel ambivalent towards it. I'm ready to talk about the movie. When I look at my list of notes, if I was leading the discussion today, Brad, I think this episode would be about 35 minutes long, because it's one of those things that I don't really know where to go with this. And you, as a guy who's super passionate about the movie, I think can guide us through the film a lot better than I can. So if you're feeling up to it, man, I'd like to kind of turn this episode over to you to be our guide. You can be our Virgil, guiding us through the layers of hell that is the prequel trilogy.
Here's the thing, Bob. This is going to blow your mind. Why we're ready for this role reversal? I have a page of notes.
A whole page.
And that's a first.
You did it, man. You wrote a 1-page document.
I did. Now, when I say 1 page, it is like, like the Amazon notepads that are like
a 5x7.
Yeah.
Sure.
It's one of those pages.
I thought you were going to say you typed it in like 18-point Comic Sans.
Do you remember in college when like a professor would be like, you can have one note card of a cheat note card, and people would like print whatever they are, like a 5x7 note card, and they would print in like size 6 font every fact from the entire semester.
Is that what you did here?
No. First off, I would walk into those tests without a note card, because who has time to make a cheat note card? Just be smart. Come on.
Yeah. Fair.
Secondly, I don't need much preparation to defend a movie like this, but I just was so excited to talk about it that I had to write things down.
You know what? And like, again, I'm not going to be snarky with you about this movie today.
Yeah.
And no, I
trust you, Bob.
Like, I think the weird place I'm in is that I thought that I was going to end up being in the Brad G. I didn't really care for this movie, and so I'm going to like tank the audio. And I don't feel like that either. Like, it's fine. It's a fine movie with some really bad acting and some pretty bad special effects at points, and also some really great filmmaking in some stretches too. So like, I don't feel any worse about this movie than I did talking about Independence Day or Armageddon or any, like, there are things to appreciate here for sure. But you just have to lead me, your horse, to water to drink of them.
Hey, I'll lead you to the waters. I can't make you drink. And I'll say on my side of it, Bob, like the prequels are a step down from the originals for me. Not a massive step down, just a small one. The sequels are a massive step down, but we've already gone over that, and we'll go over it at the end of this season. I think that my stance on the prequels has always been that they are incredibly fun. They're great filmmaking. The sound design is light years ahead of its time, as were the originals. And the acting's not great. And I think the same thing could be said for the originals, except for the fact that Harrison Ford is just beyond incredible. I think Mark Hamill is great. Carrie Fisher's great. Like, there's just so many great actors and actresses in those films. And you just don't quite get that as often in the prequels. But other than that, I really love these movies. I'm not going to sit here and say it is the greatest movie of 1999. Like there are other movies that were better movies than Star Wars Episode 1. But man, the mixture of revisiting this film as an adult and appreciating how great of a film it is and having the nostalgia attached just has me real jazzed.
Well, let's carry that jazz music and that jazz feeling into our next segment, our first segment of the day, which we call Brad Explains.
Brad's gonna give us the movie plot with only 60 seconds ticking on the clock. So let's go ahead and hear your take with this little segment that we call Brad Explains.
Brad Explains is the part of the podcast where Brad breaks down the plot of the movie that he has just seen. This time, I'm going to say this is your, 32nd time watching episode 1.
No, see, here's the thing, Bob. You watch movies 30 times, legitimately. I've probably seen The Phantom Menace 8 times.
Okay.
Maybe 10. So, like...
That is an extravagant number for you.
Not for me, Bob. For the average person. Any human being alive in America, the most they've probably ever seen one movie is like 6 to 8 times.
I'm going to disagree with you there. And we don't need to get off on a tangent here. I'm definitely, if we're on the bell curve, Brad, like I'm definitely way far over on one end.
In the 99th plus, bro.
I think especially for people who grew up like we did in the era of Betamax, VHS, or DVDs, when they were the primary way to watch movies, when people had movies at home, they watched them a lot, dude. And I think that you just grew up in a household that didn't watch movies that often. And so legitimately, for you, 8 is a lot. But if you ask the average person, what's your favorite movie of all time? Or like, how many times did you watch The Lion King on VHS when you were a kid? Like 30 is on the low end for some kids, man. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but does that really count? Watching it 30 times when you're 6 years old? Is
Wow.
that an actual view?
I guess you can't love things as a child, according to
No.
Brad. All right, dude.
Unable to.
You have 1 minute on the clock to spoil this movie. You should be able to do it because you've seen it, as we've established, 8 whole times. So, Brad, the floor is yours, man. And go.
The Phantom Menace is a film where the Trade Federation is controlled by Lord Palpatine of the Sith, and they invade the peaceful planet of Naboo. Jedi's Qui-Gon Jinn and Obi-Wan Kenobi attempt to negotiate, but are nearly killed in the process. They rescue Queen Amidala of the Naboo, and go on an adventure that detours onto the desert planet Tatooine. There, they find and free a slave boy named Anakin and have an incredible pod race. They continue on their way to the capital planet Coruscant. There, Amidala pleads her case before the Senate, realizes it is pointless, and flies back to Naboo, enlisting aid from unexpected quarters to defeat the Trade Federation.
Did you write this down? This sounds written.
I did.
Yeah, I was going to say, that was so much more eloquent than what we normally get. And here's how I know that is because usually you start, I can hear you collecting your thoughts. I can hear inside of your brain because you always start with, Armageddon is a film about such and such. And I always think it's so funny, dude. I just we are on a podcast called Film and Whiskey. If there is one given, it is that you watched a film. We know, bud.
I still started with that.
Oh, that's true. I mean, I think you're just honoring a time-tested tradition at this point. Yeah.
Oh, of course I am. Yeah, I mean, I will say this is one of those movies that either I was going to give a really esoteric 12-second or I was going to hit the 67-second mark and get bogged down in the details. And I wanted to strike a nice balance.
Now, is it because this movie is so bad that you had to affirm that it is in fact a film?
No.
The Phantom Menace is, for the record, a film.
Fun fact, as you just said, I've said that for every single movie we've ever reviewed. So no, it's not the fact that it's quote unquote a bad film.
All right, man, let's jump into talking about the movie, and I'm going to hand it over to you. I'm going to sit back and rest on my laurels here.
I want to talk about the characters, Bob, because I think that the acting is not great on a lot of different levels.
Accurate.
I think that Ewan McGregor, Liam Neeson are both stellar in their acting. I think that Natalie Portman is a B-. She's pretty solid in certain points, and then she kneels down to Boss Nass and goes, "No, I beg you." And I'm like, George, couldn't we have taken any other take of that and put that in the film? But overall, I think Natalie Portman is solid. Jake Lloyd is terrible. Can we just agree on that and leave it be?
Yeah, we can agree on that. I truly regret and abhor the treatment of him that led to him having some mental health issues and everything. Don't give child actors so much crap, people. It's okay to admit now with some distance, no, it's not good.
Yeah.
But he's just a kid, man. What do you want?
Yeah. Yeah. And at that point, it's George Lucas for choosing him and maybe even for
directing him.
Yeah, for directing him and not giving him the right notes. And just the fact that, maybe you get a few days into it and go, this isn't quite working out.
Yeah.
Let's get
go
kid number
grab
2 in
Haley
here.
Joel Osment off Sixth Sense and bring him over here.
Oh, dude.
Yeah, Brad, I think one of my big, not fears, but as a noted non-Star Wars fan, and I don't consider myself a Star Wars hater, I'm just not, this is just not my thing that grabs me and causes me to nerd out.
Not your cup of blue milk.
Yes, drunk out of clearly plastic glasses. Where is the plastic production happening in this universe? In every Star Wars movie, it's like a Dollar Tree plastic cup. What are we doing here? Okay, anyway, not my cup of tea. However, the prequels are always really interesting to me because I can never pin down with somebody like you who grew up with the prequels. So this was these were your Star Wars movies. The the original trilogy was kind of inherited, but these are the ones that came out when you were of the right age to start watching Star Wars.
Mm-hmm. Well, here's the thing, though, about the originals. It's not like my parents passed them down to me. Like one of my best friends in the world, Mike, his parents passed Star Wars down to him.
Sure.
They love Star Wars. My parents, it was just like VHSs that we had, and when I was probably 6 or 7, I started watching them, and I really liked them, and then the Phantom Menace came out, and I went, and I remember being scared of Darth Maul.
Sure.
And like I liked it a lot, and then the second one came out, and I liked it a lot, and then the third one came out, and I skipped school and saw it, and it was really cool, because I was like, 15, 16 at that point? And I think it was around there that my fandom really cemented itself, because at that point, I'm playing Star Wars video games. I'm reading Star Wars books from the 80s and 90s that are just incredible. And, the movies coming out. And I think that's kind of the era where it really got cemented for me.
So my point was going to be, I wonder how hard it is, and I'm not accusing you of anything, but I wonder how hard it is to separate the prequels from the legacy of the original trilogy, or even from the sort of narrative, shared narrative knowledge of the original trilogy. We know who these people are because we've watched the other movies, and these are prequels. And so every time there's a fan servicey thing of Qui-Gon first being now, Obi-Wan Kenobi, and I can just hear an audience in 99 going oh, he's the guy from the movie. You know what I mean? But
Leo pointing at this movie.
Yes,
screen.
Exactly. I want to talk about this movie as much as it is indebted to those other movies. I want to talk about it in a vacuum, because I think that this is where Lucas's writing and directing really suffer sometimes. I think he relies a lot on your prior knowledge of these people. And sometimes that's an okay thing to do. You don't have to give tons of backstory, because A, this is the backstory. And B, you just make passing nods at certain characters, and that's fine. But I'm wondering, Brad, do you, when you watch this movie, do you think of it as a piece of a big whole, or do you evaluate it solely on, if this was the first Star Wars movie, would you think differently about it? You know what I mean?
Yes, is the answer to your question. Because I think that when you take, especially the Phantom Menace, I think that there's 4 characters that we know from the later films. There's Anakin, there's Obi-Wan, there's C-3PO, and there's R2-D2. Other than that, not a single character in this film, as best as I know. Star Wars fans, you can come at me, that's fine.
I mean, the Emperor.
There's somebody else. Okay, sure. Yeah, the Emperor. So 5 characters that are known in the later films. Pretty much everybody else is not a known character. And so I think it's easy to come into this and treat it in a vacuum, to just say, all right, what do we have just here in this film? And that's where I think you are off on the wrong foot already, Bob. I think that the writing in this film is great. And not necessarily the dialogue. As you have informed me many times, the script is not just the dialogue. It's everything that goes into this movie. I actually think that the story here is really well done, and the characters are really interesting, and they flesh each other out in really fascinating ways.
All right, so I am going to disagree with you a little bit. Yeah, man, it's so weird being not in the driver's seat of how these conversations go, Brad. I'm in the Brad G role today.
Yeah.
So here's what I'm thinking about the writing of this movie. We've both established the dialogue is not great. We'll get around to examples of how it's not great. That's fine.
There are great moments, though.
Oh, for sure. Sure.
When Qui-Gon goes, the ability to speak does not make one intelligent. It is one of the most priceless lines I think I've ever heard in a movie.
When we did episode 3, I think you were kind of shocked by how much I appreciated the grand overarching narrative of the prequels. I think that taken as one huge meta story, it's really cool what George Lucas did here.
Yeah.
I think that it also kind of, when it doesn't work, I think, episode 1 and episode 2 are obviously weaker films than episode 3. And so to some extent, it works less well in both of those movies. And I think that when it's not working as well, it's almost to me like the story that these movies are telling is almost a more compelling Wikipedia article, because you at least see what the broad strokes that are being painted are. And I think if this movie is the only thing you have to go on, you don't have prior knowledge of the original trilogy, I think this movie's kind of a mess, like in terms of what the through line is. Because, even if you look at the Wikipedia on this movie, Lucas says that he's trying to tell 5 separate narrative threads, but it's not that they're intertwined with each other. They are supposed to logically flow from each other. And the big main overarching thread of episode 1, according to Lucas, is Palpatine's power play here.
Mm-hmm.
Which is fine and which is good.
Yeah.
I just think that if Palpatine is kind of the quote unquote main character here, we need to see a little bit more of his wheelings and dealings. I think you need to just abandon the ruse that we don't know that he is Palpatine. Even to the end of the film, they're still shrouding him in shadow. We don't know it's the same guy. And the audience is one step ahead of where Lucas thinks the audience is, or will allow the audience to go, because he's like, I need to save that for the second movie or the third movie or whatever it might be. The characters themselves are interesting characters, but the choices that he makes in terms of who to develop and how much to develop each of those characters, I think that the calculus is just a little bit off here.
It's hard for me to fault Lucas for narratively choosing not to reveal Palpatine earlier, because he knew he was making multiple films. Mm-hmm. I'm with you in let's evaluate this film on its own merits, but part of its own merits are that it was made to be part of a trilogy.
Sure.
And so for me, I think it's this is going to sound like a Marvel defense, but that's kind of part of the appeal of the prequel trilogy, is that you get to see this story through all 3 films. And so the Palpatine of it all, pretty much everybody knew that Palpatine, Sidious, they're all the same person, even as you're watching it. And so I think to me, it makes it much more sinister of an antagonist that he is behind the scenes. He's showing up in one form to the Trade Federation and showing up in a different form to the Senate. And he is getting all of his enemies to attack each other and weaken each other. And then he doesn't come in and destroy them all. He comes in as the hero to save them all.
And again, I think that's a really great touch. I think the decision, though, to keep showing the Darth Sidious side of things as a hooded figure who just happens to have the same chin and mouth as this other guy that has the same voice, have a scene where we see him say okay, see you later, Amidala, and then turn around and put his hood up and a hologram pops up of the Trade Federation guys. And then we know the reveal that Lucas doesn't actually show us. And I'm thinking of Lord of the Rings in the Fellowship. The second you see Christopher Lee come on screen, you're like, that motherfucker, the bad guy. Look at him. Do you know what I mean? Even before he gets revealed as the bad guy, it's you know what's coming here, but you still need that turn for the audience's sake, for the character's sake. And even if he doesn't want to reveal to the characters within the film that this is the bad guy, I just kept wondering, why are you still doing this whole thing at the end of the movie? Because we know already, George.
Yeah, but wouldn't that be too much telling and not enough showing?
I mean, they did it with Saruman in the first movie, and he lasted through 3 movies, or 2.5. Yeah, but, you know what I mean?
Sure, but I don't know. This doesn't feel like a sticking point for me. To me, I think that this is Lucas doing a great job of show don't tell. He shows you that he is the villain. He doesn't tell you that he's the villain. And look at the character of Darth Maul. Darth Maul is one of the best written characters in the entire Star Wars universe, because he is set up as the embodiment of evil. Like, tell me you didn't see him as a 10-year-old child.
Oh, he's
go, that is a pure demon.
Now,
like
but here's the thing, man. Like, the character design, the makeup, the lighting, like all of the filmmaking things that aren't on the page are what makes him a good character, though. Like, because as an adult, you go back and watch this movie and you're like, oh, this dude's in the movie for 4 minutes and 12 seconds. And like,
yeah.
And I feel kind of cheated out of what should have been a character that lasted many films, because he is such he looks different than any character I've ever seen in Star Wars. And he sounds so intelligent, and he has the coolest lightsaber I've ever seen. He is clearly the equal of these guys in terms of fighting with the lightsabers. Like, I don't think Lucas wrote a great character here, Brad. I think he's the most underwritten of all characters in this movie.
But that's the beauty of the character. He has all of those things, and he is a pawn in Sidious's game. Like that's the beauty of Darth Maul. He represents everything that the Jedi fear. He's terrifying. He's a demon. He has incredible fighting capabilities. He's manipulative. And then at the end of the film, they ask, like, is he the master or is he the apprentice?
Sure.
And they don't know the answer to that question, but we do, because Lucas has been showing us throughout that he is not the master. But it sets up for the characters within the universe this ambiguity that's really important to understand why the Jedi do the things that they do.
You make a great point. I'm just saying, give me 12 more minutes of him. I don't need him. Even if you say, okay, I'm going to kill him at the end of the first movie, though, cool. But let's have 2 more fight scenes. Let's have 3 more lines of dialogue. I want to know this guy a little bit before you off him.
I don't totally disagree with you. I would love to see more Darth Maul fighting.
We took it all. We brought them to our land. An endless night, ember hot and icy cold. The rage of the earth. We made this curse. Carved it in the blood on our backs. We did not see. We could not, but she did. And in the end,
what will I become? Senwa Saga. Hellblade 2.
Play it now with Game Pass.
And speaking of fighting, I just saw Dune 2. Fun fact, in theater. You're welcome, Robert.
What a great theater going experience Dune 2 was.
Yeah, I saw it in XD.
Oh man,
I've been told that Dolby is the way to go.
So XD is Cinemark's answer to IMAX. It is a floor to ceiling screen, and it is more widely available than IMAX, and it's more affordable. And so I am a huge proponent of seeing stuff in XD. That's just an aside. Sorry.
Yes, totally. It's okay. We should do a bonus episode just talking about the specs of movie theaters. I'm sure it would get so many downloads. I bring up Dune 2 to say that there's an incredible fight scene near the end of the movie that I wish we had something like that with Darth Maul. And not like an extra one, but I wish that the middle fight scene when they're on Tatooine and Qui-Gon fights him for 30 seconds.
Yep.
I wish that one was a little more developed. I think you could have spent a little more time there, and it would have established him even more greatly as this threat.
Yeah, totally agree, man. And I realized that we were supposed to be talking about the characters in general. We probably should talk about the performances that go along with the characters, because otherwise I don't know that we'll ever get through the list of characters. We've spent 12 minutes talking about 2 characters, Brad. So I don't know. You go ahead and introduce whoever you want to talk about, and let's just work down the list here.
I want to talk about Jar Jar Binks.
Jar Jar Binks.
Ahmed Best. Another person who just got true, like Liam Neeson talks about this in an interview where he's like, I spent, however many days on set with him. Liam Neeson literally called his agent and said, Ahmed Best is the next Eddie Murphy. He is that funny and incredible to be around and just an awesome guy. And Liam said, he's like, and I think his career kind of got ruined because of Star Wars and how he was treated.
It absolutely did. And
not okay.
Not okay. Same deal though with Jake Lloyd, man. Jar Jar Binks I will have none of the Jar Jar Binks revisionist history or reclamation project. He is as bad as advertised, folks. Like,
no, he's not.
The character,
he literally is
the
not.
character is horrible. The writing is atrocious. It is like if I could find the most annoying program for my 4-year-old on Netflix, the writing for that and the repetitive, idiotic nature of the noises that come out of that thing's mouth pale in comparison to Jar Jar Binks. Like it is like nails on a chalkboard. And the thing is, like, I don't fault the guy at all. I don't think the voice is very good. It doesn't sound super convincing, but Lucas trying to do this weird, like, proto-Jamaican Rastafarian thing coupled with like a broken form of English, coupled with like all of the Gungans doing the like blah, 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 blah. Brad, it's terrible. And they all go on 45 seconds too long. You of all people are attuned to when you think a scene is going on too long. Every single time they interact with the Gungans, Brad, it is excruciatingly horribly paced.
This is just a matter of preference, Bob, because I think everything you just said is objectively false.
I don't know that you can evaluate this film without the lens of a guy that just loves everything Star Wars, dude. Like it.
No. See, that's where I think you're completely wrong. I don't just view this as a Star Wars fan. Watching this movie again, and I watched it maybe a year and a half ago. So like watching it twice in the time of us doing this podcast, I've been able to watch it with an objective lens. And I look back on Jar Jar, and I think that there are moments with him that are not great, where he's annoying and frustrating and silly. And the more time I spend with him, the more I think that that's kind of the purpose of the character.
Well, sure it is.
And I'm okay with that. Like the whole thing with the end of the Ryan Johnson one.
Mm-hmm.
Can't even think of the name of it right now.
It's called The Last Jedi.
Ugh, what a garbage movie. The thing with The Last Jedi that a lot of people loved and were pumped about was like, oh, he's reintroducing this idea that anybody can be a Jedi and that anybody can have an impact on the universe. And then they come, the same people, like you, they come and they all over Jar Jar. And I'm like, the entire purpose of Jar Jar is to say that even idiotic, bumbling nobodies can have an impact when they have a good heart and when they are kind to the world around them.
Brad,
they can have an impact on the universe. And without Jar Jar, you don't have any of the end of the film.
Okay, like listen, I'm not arguing with the function of the character. Like, I know what he's there for. I know what he's supposed to be doing. His dialogue is awful. His character is grating, and they let his scenes run too long. Like, that has nothing to do with... it's not that I misunderstand, and I know he's supposed to be annoying, but you can still convey the character's annoyance with him without pulling your audience completely out of the movie because of their own frustration with him. Like, I'm not alone here on thinking that Jar Jar is a hindrance to the film.
And I'm not alone in saying that that's just not the case for a lot of people who watch this movie.
Sure.
Like, his scenes don't...
You said people like you, Bob, praise The Last Jedi and then shit on Jar Jar. And essentially because we don't understand the function of Jar Jar. First of all, this has nothing to do with The Last Jedi. And also, like, I get Jar Jar. I just don't think it's a well-executed character.
I think it is.
Cool. But you don't have to say that. You don't have to say that I'm too dumb to understand it because of that. Like, I just... Oh, man, we got to work through some characters here because now I'm starting to get angry. I feel like I have been as generous as possible with your take on this movie versus my take on this movie. I would hope that you can be equally generous when we get to some of the later Star Wars films this season, because Brad, like, you know, I just don't think it's a controversial statement to say, like, yeah, I don't think Jar Jar works, and I'm defending the guy who played him because I think Lucas did a poor job writing him. But, like, I guess I can't say that.
I think that Jar Jar is a character who has been pooped upon too much, and I will defend him. because I don't think he's the best character in this film, but I don't think that he's the worst.
Oh, let's do that. Who's the worst character in this film for you?
Anakin.
But as a character, not as a performance. Like, I'm talking like the writing of the character itself, the dialogue.
Oh, within
the world of the movie. Like, who is not fleshed out enough? Who is like just an unnecessary character? Like, who's the worst at accomplishing what this story wants it to accomplish?
Oh, that's an interesting question. I've not thought about that question before.
All right, so we've talked about Ahmed Best. We've talked about Jake Lloyd. Justice for both of them. I agree with you, man. They have been crapped on too much. I think it's fair. And I think what I'm trying to say, Brad, is like, I said this with the first Star Wars. I don't think George Lucas is good at directing actors because he's worked with some all-time great actors, and almost without fail, the worst performance they've all ever turned in is when they were like performing with George Lucas. And I think it says a heck of a lot about the charisma of Harrison Ford and Carrie Fisher in particular, that like they did not fall victim to this, because even like Mace Windu in this movie, though you could tell the directions that he was getting from Lucas, he comes across more as an asshole than as like a guy who knows more than he's letting on. Whereas like Yoda's like, oh, this dude knows something, but he's not a dick. Mace Windu is just kind of a dick in this movie. And I think like, how do you mess up having Samuel L. Jackson on set? How do you mess up Natalie Portman? It really surprises me that more people didn't say, you know what, maybe like some of the problems we have with this movie rest on George Lucas's shoulders, and we shouldn't take it out on this 10-year-old kid.
Sure. Yeah, no, and Bob, I've always said to you that his weakest aspect of being a director is directing actors.
For sure.
Like that, I've always said that that's his issue. I just think that the characters he writes are not as poorly conceived or executed as people think. I think sometimes the acting isn't great, but the characters themselves, I actually really think are well done. And there's a lot more, there's so much more intent behind the characters and ability to advance the story that I think Lucas is really good at writing characters. You know what? I will agree with you that I think there's like a confluence of things happening. I think it's the writing is kind of poor especially for the dialogue with some of these characters. I think the direction is pretty bad and it leads to bad performances. And then the fourth thing is I think sometimes this movie just could use a little bit of tightening up in the edit. And it's not even like, I'm not even advocating for whole scenes to be cut out. It's one of those movies where we note sometimes, Brad, that like there's a 2-second pause between the time that somebody finishes their line and then they cut to the character and then you watch the character react. And every line with Anakin's mom, whose name I believe is Shmi, but they don't actually say her name, like I don't think at all in the movie. Like Sis is not good in this movie. And I think it's not even necessarily because she's a bad actress, although I would not say she's a great actress. I think it's because every time Qui-Gon says something to her, they cut to her and she mulls it over for like 4 seconds and then she reacts and then she says her line. Everything that happens before the pod race on Tatooine is like the movie slows down a lot, dude. And I think it's all these things happening at the same time, but I really do think that Lucas could have been bailed out a little bit if they just kind of tightened up the edit a bit. Sure. There's definitely moments in the movie that drag. I think that to answer your question from before, I would say that Shmi is probably the poorest written character. That they don't flesh out her relationship with Anakin enough, and there's not enough connection there. Like you need some time to establish that mother-son relationship that's so important. And there's moments like I actually think the one scene where she kind of shines is when she's telling Qui-Gon about his birth and the chosen one nature of it all, the Messiah nature. Yeah. Like I think that's actually a really solid scene between the two of them.
I agree. And also some weird chemistry going. I was like, is Qui-Gon getting some booty while he's on Tatooine?
All I have to say is there is so much chemistry between her and Liam Neeson. It's wild. That's probably the thing that completely flew over my head as a kid that now as an adult, I'm like, Oh man.
Oh, they were boning
Liam
for sure.
is-
Yeah. 100%, dude. I mean, listen, it's like a no harm, no foul situation. Like, you're not getting her pregnant. The Force gets her pregnant. You're good, man. All right, Brad, I think we're running a little long. Do you want to come back and kind of finish out the main cast and then go into the rest of our stuff, or do you want to knock it out right now real quick?
Let's knock out just a few more. What are your issues with Natalie Portman? Because I like her a lot in this. There's moments she's not great.
I think Natalie Portman has grown into one of the best actresses working today. I think she's been in some incredible movies. She's an Oscar winner. I just don't think she was very good as a kid. And I just watched a movie for the first time about a month ago that she was in called The Professional, which it's an IMDb top 250. I just never seen it before. It came out in like 94, I think, 95. And Natalie Portman's like the star of this movie. And I'm like, oh man, I expected her to be like grown up Natalie Portman in terms of how good she is as a kid actress. And she's just very much had the limitations of being a kid actor. And that might just be me like reading expectations back onto her when she wasn't as good. But this is like that. But then also, to your point, let's deliver every line in the most monotone way. And, and I just don't understand like the accent when she's Amidala. Like, what are we doing here? Like, it's not explained. And I think it takes away from when she's acting as Padme, very naturalistic, really charming. I loved it a lot. But as soon as she puts that makeup back on, it's like, I do not care about you anymore.
Yeah, I think that's... I can see what Lucas was going for there. Like, the idea of a queen being regal and measured and in control of her emotions, and like, they very clearly lean into like Japanese kind of kabuki tropes of like the way she presents herself and her costuming and things like that. And so I think that there is an affect that is presented that just doesn't totally work. I think within the world of the movie, it works. But I would agree with you. It's honestly, it's not when she has the makeup on. Like, the very opening scene that she's in when she talks to the Trade Federation, she has that white makeup with the red dots on the cheeks. I actually think that the demeanor and affect works really well when she is in full regalia. It's when she's the queen, but she's not in full regalia, that I'm kind of like, okay, like, give me a little bit of emotion, like something.
Right.
And, I'll go back to the line I said before when she like bows and she's like, "We are asking you, no, begging you." And I'm like, okay, honey, like, sure. When you're talking to your enemies, the Trade Federation, don't show any emotion. Totally makes sense. When you're begging another military nation to come to your aid, like, give me a little something, just anything.
Right. And I think if I can steer us into, okay, I don't even think we need to talk about Ewan McGregor because we have talked about him before. He's great. He is absolved of all wrongdoing in this situation.
Yes.
I'm really disappointed in Qui-Gon Jinn. And it breaks my heart to say it because from a character design standpoint, there are very few people who have ever looked cooler in Star Wars than Liam Neeson as like, he is the prototype for like, I want to watch a movie about this Jedi because he just looks like a guy I want to learn more about. And I think that's my thing is we don't actually learn much about him. He's just like, he's the guy that is the seasoned vet. He's like, he's kind of on his way out. He's inching towards retirement, it seems like here. And like, he's only really there to be like utilitarian, to serve the plot, to spout some exposition, and to like negotiate over, car parts for a half hour. And like, I just wish we had more of what's going on inside Qui-Gon's head. I love that he wants to buck the trends and like, resist the orders of the Jedi Order. Like, that's really cool. Why are you such a rebel? Tell me more about that. And we just don't get it. And I think that's the most frustrating thing about it.
I don't understand how your brain works, Bob.
You don't. I mean, you think we get enough fleshed out about him to make his death at the end be like as impactful as it could be?
Yes.
Okay. Like again, I'm not knocking the performance. I'm not knocking the character design. I just think he's underwritten. Is he underwritten? Question, tangential question. what would it take to make you happy, Brad? Like, I feel like I'm giving you a lot here, and I'm like, here's my issue with this character. I'm going to elucidate it as clearly as I can. And then you're like, you're just crazy. Like, I don't know, man. Like, if you don't think he's underwritten, like, what's your reasoning for thinking that he is, in fact, fully fleshed out?
I think I feel so flabbergasted by it is because I've never, like, the idea of Qui-Gon being underwritten is so far from my consciousness. I've never even thought about it. It's that just ridiculous to me. Here's the thing with Qui-Gon. He is, in a lot of ways, the main character of this movie. Mm-hmm. Like, we spend most of the movie with him. The majority of the film is learning how he thinks about the world, and it's through him that we get the lens of what we think Jedis ought to be like for the rest of the Star Wars universe. Like, he has the viewpoint that the most important thing we do is listen to the Force. And, like, he says that constantly throughout the film. And so, once again, I feel like you're asking for telling more than showing. Like, for me, Qui-Gon Jinn shows you what it means to be a Jedi. All of the other Jedi in this film, Samuel L. Jackson, Yoda, Ki-Adi-Mundi, Plo Koon, not that I know all their names or anything.
I was going to say, are you just making up sounds now?
No,
Flargan,
I'm not.
Blurston.
So the large skulled conehead Jedi is Ki-Adi-Mundi.
Sure.
The one with the gas mask is Plo Koon.
Okay. Yeah, of course.
Anyways.
Stands to reason.
It stands to reason. Anyways, all of them show up where? On Coruscant. They're all wrapped up in the politics of the realm. And Qui-Gon is held up as this paragon of, like, he listens to the Force and trusts it to do what it needs to do. And I think that that's, like, the beautiful thing about Qui-Gon. And, you know, I'm going to take the movie out of the vacuum for a second to say, like, Duel of the Fates, right? The song at the end of the film.
Mm-hmm.
It's about the fate of Anakin Skywalker and the fate of the Force. And the duel is, will Qui-Gon live or will Qui-Gon die? Because if Qui-Gon doesn't die, he goes on to mentor Anakin in the ways of the Force and possibly, like, doesn't become Darth Vader. And so that I think that's why, for me, Qui-Gon represents this super impactful character within the universe that is incredibly well acted and I think well written. And so I guess, I don't know, is that a cogent defense of why I think he's actually a really well written character?
I think it is. And I do still think that sometimes you're confusing, like, my displeasure with, you know, the lack of dialogue or the lack of monologues that flesh out the character's backstory, whatever, with, like, an inability of me to see the function of the character. Like, I think you're absolutely right. Qui-Gon sets the template for what a Jedi should be for the rest of this prequel trilogy. And you're right, overarching, like, Star Wars. I just wish that we got, like, you know, one scene of Obi-Wan being like, hey man, like, what's driving, why are you insisting on this kid being the chosen one? And him being like, you know, it sends me back to when I was, like, just give me something that, like, fleshes him out a little bit. Cause I think it's the highest compliment for me to say, I want to spend more time with him. And what pisses me off is that we don't get that time. And I felt, I don't know, it just didn't feel like it was, his story was completed before the rug got pulled out from under us. Both him and Darth Maul. Give us another half movie with them. Kill him in the middle of the second one. It'll be even more shocking. You know what I mean?
Sure. I think that's the beauty of the movie is you don't get everything you want. I don't know.
I think we should drink whiskey.
I think we should drink whiskey too. We've been going for 45 minutes, Bob.
All right, let's get to it, Brett. All right, so today we are checking out Calumet Farm Single Rack Black Bourbon Whiskey. This is a 14-year-old product. Brad, I think it's the first Calumet we've ever had on the podcast. Is that right?
Yeah, as far as I know. But who knows? I've drank a lot of whiskey.
Yeah, so have I, my friend. I keep seeing Calumet all over the place. It is, for the most part, a premium brand. And these like 12, 14, 15, 16-year expressions that sit on the top shelf would tell me that they are ultra premium. Now,
yes.
Now, because this is the first time we've had the brand on the show, I'll give a little bit of backstory. As far as I know, Calumet is a non-distilling producer. So they release whiskeys, but they don't distill them themselves. They partner with a distillery, they say, that is also in Kentucky. It looks like it's called Western Spirits. So they're sourcing this whiskey. It's like super premium, small batch. I'm reading something right now that says that this particular product is from a small batch of only 19 barrels. So they're all from a single center cut rack from, and this is a quote, Brad, from the ideal maturation location and conditions inside the rick house.
I mean, obviously it's ideal, Bob. What else would it be?
We picked suboptimal conditions for this limited release. Yeah,
That's
so
I love when people like ask directors or something like, what's one of your movies you made that you didn't like? And it's like, dude, I like all my movies. All my movies were cut from an ideal condition.
Every time they're like, was Timothée Chalamet your first choice? Like, what are they gonna say? Like, no, I wanted Tobey Maguire or something. Like,
yeah.
no. Like,
it's the same thing in sports, right?
Yeah.
Like, oh, the quarterback, was he your first choice? Nope.
No, he was not.
Sure wasn't. I hope he can go kick rocks.
Okay, so 19 barrels, all from the same rack in the same rick house. This is clocking in at 96.2 proof. I do not have mash bill, breakdowns here, Brad. So it could be wheated, it could be high rye. I have no
Bob,
idea. Yeah.
This is 74% corn, 18% rye, 8% malted barley.
Oh, thanks, man. So it is not wheated, and it is high-ish rye.
Yeah.
Let's dive in.
Yeah, as I got into the nose on this, it's a decent nose. I got some orange zest, some dark chocolate. The overarching note for me, though, or I should say the over-oaking note, was oak.
Mm-hmm.
There is so much oak on this, and I am repeating what the whiskey world has said for decades. But the fact that bourbon has to be aged in new white oak, American white oak barrels means that you can't go much past 10 to 12 years without it becoming wildly over oaked.
And I'm going to say something, my own preference, Brad, through the years. I sometimes think even 10 years is too much. Like,
yeah,
especially if you're drinking barrel strength whiskey, like if we get a good Knob Creek 10 or 12, I think those are too oaky most of the time. I just do.
Yeah.
So, like, take your Pappy 23 and do whatever you want with it. But, like, that's too freaking long in a barrel for bourbon. It just is.
Yeah. No, I'm with you because this is a heavily oaked nose. I'll give it a 7.5. I think that there's some nice stuff going on here, but I'm worried. I'll just say that.
Yeah, there's some really nice baking spices under here. It's like baked apples a little bit. But the oak is so heavy that it almost turns sour on the nose. It's like, it doesn't smell like char or ash. It's almost like that toasted barrel thing that we don't like on a lot of toasted barrel finishes, Brad. So I'm with you. I'm going to give it a 7.5. And I think the flavor is kind of a similar story. Like, it's a really, really solid tasting whiskey that just has way too much oak that comes in on the back part of the palate and into the finish. I mean, I don't know. Where are you falling on the palate here?
It's decent. I'd give it a 7 out of 10. There's oak. The char really comes through for me. There's some vanilla notes. I almost felt like it was almost like a Sour Patch Kid kind of vibe that I was getting, but there's not enough complexity for me. Like, I can tell that it's a well-made whiskey, but it's not a very flavorful whiskey.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's like a huge insult to say you did a good job making it and then there was no flavor, but that's kind of where I'm at. The fact that it is a well-made whiskey, I'll still give it a 7 out of 10. I just want more out of it. It's an underwritten character.
It is the Qui-Gon of whiskeys. It looks really cool and I want to learn more about it, but damn it, it underdelivers.
It's
so
just not enough there.
I actually think that the flavor is a little bit better than the nose, but then I think like, okay, I gave the nose a 7.5. Is this an 8 on the palate? And I don't think it is. So I think I'm still going to give it a 7.5. But like, dear listener, in your mind, I want you to think of it as like a 7.51. You know what I mean? All right, man.
How about you give it a 7.51 and the nose a 7.49?
There it is. Yeah, it balances out perfectly. We have brought balance to the Force.
You were supposed to bring balance to the Force.
On the finish, I'm kind of surprised because there is that oakiness, but then it dissipates really quickly. I think there's a bit of a chest burn. It drinks a little bit hotter than 96 proof. Like I would have thought this was in the like 104, 105 range. It's really nice. It's a nice finish. There's nothing really distinctive about it. And there's nothing that screams you should pay triple digits for this. So maybe the value or, what will be the value score is kind of tainting my scores here a little bit, but like, this is fine. I'm going to give it a 6.5 on the finish.
Yeah, I give it a 6 on the finish. It falls off. It doesn't last as long as you might think, but it is only in the 90s proof. I think 96 proof. It's okay. Balance wise, I give it a 7. Like, I think what they're trying to do here, they accomplish. I'm just not super impressed with it.
Man, what a perfect pairing for the Star Wars prequels, I tell you.
What a terrible pairing for the Star Wars prequels.
All right, I think we're pretty much in lockstep. I'm going to give this a 7 as well. Why don't you take us to our value score? Brad, what will a bottle of this cost you?
Well, at this point, it's on their own website, Bob. They have at the bottom of the stats sheet availability level, and the availability level of this is low/rare. Technically, it's an MSRP, I believe, of $120. I would. So I don't normally do this, Bob, but I'm going to do it. I drank this Calumet earlier today. Right now, I am currently drinking a bottle of Barrel Rye private release that we purchased at the Kentucky
KBF.
Bourbon Barrel Festival. Yeah. I'll just say this. I think we paid like $85 for that bottle, $90. I would pay $120 for that bottle. I would never pay $120 for this. I gave it a 2 out of 10 to be nice, but this is bad value, folks.
Listen, it's 14 years old. It's 19 barrels. This is like the absolute minimum that this could possibly cost is like $100.
Yes.
So I think they're overcharging for it slightly. I don't think that it's like astronomically priced, but it is not a whiskey that tastes like the flavor of this whiskey is not worth $120. I'm going to be a little bit kinder than Brad. I'm going to give it a 4.5 on the value. But again, that's just because I think it's like in the range that it should be based on the market.
Yeah. Yeah, no, 100%. Like, I think Calumet is doing really interesting things here. Like, to make ultra select, we're only taking 19 barrels and figuring out what we can do with them. Like, it's interesting. The juice is not worth triple digits.
I'm coming to a 33 out of 50. Brad, what are you at?
29.5.
29. Wow, it's been a minute since we've had one in the 20s. So we're coming to just a 31.25 out of 50. Folks, this is what we do here. Like, we're not here to poo-poo whiskeys, but I feel very strongly, Brad, as a guy who has limited funds, and I believe you do as well. Otherwise, you should have been paying for a lot more throughout the course of our friendship, that we have a responsibility to tell people when we think something is overpriced or just not even overpriced, but just not worth the money in terms of just pure flavor. And I think this is one of those times. I'm very grateful
Bob,
to our friend Wes for sending us a sample of this, but yes. I would not purchase this for myself, Brad.
Wes is incredible. Bob, I have a very important question for you.
Yes.
Was the $5 bag worth the value that you got? Well, what's the value score on that bag?
The return on investment of just the story itself was worth at least 10 $5 Taco Bell bags.
Oh, that's good.
Thanks, man.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, let's get back into you calling me an idiot for not understanding Star Wars.
I was going to say, maybe our friendship is salvageable.
Maybe.
All right, everybody. That was Calumet 14-year single rack black a whiskey that I will give a black mark to.
Mm-hmm. Here, here.
Here, here, here. You know what I would not give a black mark to, Bob?
What's that, Brad?
Canada's favorite segment, Two Facts and a Falsehood.
Brad is gonna try to stump you, Bob. Two are right and one is wrong. Two facts and a falsehood.
Two Facts and a Falsehood is the part of the podcast where Brad presents me with 3 items as fact about the making of this movie, one of which is a complete lie, and I have to suss out which one that is. I'm a little nervous today, man. You know a lot about this movie, so I think you could very easily just make up some more words about how, you know, Blarfin the Hutt did a whole bunch of stuff, and I'm just going to think that it's accurate. I thought about just letting you have this one, but I got screwed over by our friend Noah Gattel last week, who saddled me with 2 losses on Armageddon.
Mm-hmm.
So I went from 8-2 to 8-4.
Just like that.
I'm in a precarious position here, man.
Yeah, I'm glad for it.
All right, man, hit me with your 2 facts and a falsehood.
Fact number 1, in an early version of Lucas's script for The Phantom Menace, there was a subplot involving a young Wookiee named Worka, who was intended to be a companion to young Anakin Skywalker during his time on Tatooine. However, he was dropped in favor of the one and only Jar Jar Binks. Fact number 2, according to Jake Lloyd, there was a 6-hour cut of the film that was screened for several people before the film was released, with those who saw it proclaiming it to be mind-bogglingly good, end quote. Fact number 3, Ewan McGregor once stated that before filming began, he and Liam Neeson were taken to a private room where 2 Lucasfilm employees approached them with a long, locked wooden box. When opened, they saw 20 various lightsaber hilts, and that they were allowed to choose one of them to be their character's official weapon for the movie.
I like how they received their lightsabers as if they were like in the Russian mob. Like they got taken to a shady back room. Some guy opened a briefcase. Pick your weapon. Oh, man.
Choose it now, duh.
Okay, I feel like number 2 is true. I just feel like George Lucas really thought that he had made the great American film here. And was like, you know what? Let's do a 6-hour version. That's going to bring him in. So it's either
Bob,
one... What?
I would watch a 6-hour version of this movie.
You know what? I might actually watch a 6-hour version of this movie, too, because I feel like it certainly can't get any slower than the slow parts of this movie.
You would probably get your hour and a half
all the
long
stuff that I
Qui-Gon
want.
film.
Yes, exactly. So it's either
I literally
one or
was
3.
watching this with Haley, and I told her, I was like, I could watch like 4 or 5 hours of this.
What does Haley think of this movie?
Oh, she likes it a lot.
Oh.
Fun fact, Haley really likes Jar Jar. She thinks that he is
Of course
funny.
she does. Of course she likes Jar Jar. Literally everything that I like, she thinks sucks. And literally everything that I'm like, that's not for me. It's for Haley. We are the yin and yang holding the universe together.
Usually hyperbolic speech is like obviously false, but
It is.
I don't think you're far
true.
off.
Yeah. Oh, man. Okay, so it's either 1 or 3. 3 sounds pretty true as well. Remind me of what number 1 was again.
That there was a companion for Anakin that was
called
a Wookiee.
Worka. Yeah.
Yeah, but it got dropped for Jar Jar.
I don't know, man. These are both really good. I think 3 sounds true, so I'm tempted to say 1 is the falsehood. But I don't freaking know, man. Yeah, I'll just go with my gut. I'm going to say 1 is the falsehood here.
Bob, you are on a streak of trusting your gut because number 1 is the falsehood.
Oh, hey. All right, cool. I thought you were going to say I'm on a streak of losing.
No, you're not. You have been nailing it this season for 2 facts and a falsehood.
Here's my reasoning. I figured that George Lucas was so bought into Jar Jar Binks that there could not have been another version. Like, from the get-go, he was like, no, this is the thing that works about this movie. Like, we have to stick with it.
This is the one thing that makes sense to me in this crazy, messed up universe.
Misa loved Jar Jar Binks.
Here's one thing I will say about Jar Jar. I would encourage you to watch George Lucas's interview where he talks about the racism complaints about Jar Jar, because frankly, I think it's ridiculous. And
the racism complaint is ridiculous, or
yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. There's nothing about the character that was meant to be, or I think is racist about it. But I'll leave that to the
Let it be known, we're taking a principled stand here at Film and Whiskey. Jar Jar Binks, not racist.
Not racist character.
This episode has gone so much differently than I would have expected it to go.
This is my favorite episode we've ever done.
I'm sure it is, man. Talk about cone-headed Jedis and stuff.
Can we talk about the pod race,
yes,
please, for the love of God?
Okay, so this is what I was most excited to talk to you about, because it is by far the best piece of filmmaking in this movie. Everything builds to this, and I think it builds for even too long, but it still pays off. And my question to you, Brad G, is now that you have seen in full the film Ben-Hur, does it make you appreciate the pod race more, or does it make you feel a little bit like, I have now seen how the sausage is made, and I can tell that Lucas kind of ripped it off a bit here?
No.
Okay.
I think that for a new era and a new generation, this is the Ben-Hur race.
Mm-hmm.
Like yes, it's a very clear through line from Ben-Hur to the Phantom Menace, and I'm A-okay with that. Mm-hmm. I think that's part of the fun of doing this podcast, is that now I can watch the Phantom Menace and go, oh, Ben-Hur, one of the best race scenes I've ever seen put to film, followed up by the Phantom Menace 50 years later, one of the best race scenes I've seen put to film. Mm-hmm. Also on a desert, also great sound design, great visuals. I'm here for it, man.
I thought it was excellent, and I also thought that it did the best job of covering up how bad some of the CGI is in 1999. And we'll get into talking about, before we get out of here, Brad, I do want to talk about the CGI a little bit. But even at this early stage of fully CG characters, Lucas uses it to great effect in this scene, because you can cover up shoddy CGI if you make it fly by at like 300 miles an hour.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think that's really like the key to this scene, is like you put a camera inside the cockpit, whatever you want to call the seat, with Jake Lloyd, and there's like minimal CG that you focus on. Like it's all there, but it's whizzing by so fast that it's like it looks like a real environment. And I think that it is so clearly defined, like what the geography of this racetrack is, that at a certain point you're going to have the what are the bandits called that shoot at them?
The sand people?
Yes, yeah. Like, they're going to come around this curve, they're going to get shot at. They're going to go through this cave. A guy's going to hit this like stalagmite thing and blow up. Like it's very clearly laid out for you. And there's characters saying at every point, like, this is how many laps they have to go. This is who's in what place in the race. The only complaint, Brad, that I have with that whole sequence is like, I know that Jedi Knights are like stoic people, but Qui-Gon, my guy, and Shmi, can you just like cheer a little? Like, I have never seen such disinterested spectators at a sporting event in my whole life.
I mean, I think that Qui-Gon should be disinterested. That's who the Jedi are. I think that Shmi does a decent job of showing emotion. Like there's a few moments where she kind of gasps and grabs her mouth, and I can easily see a world where a mother isn't like weeping in fear. She's like shocked in fear. But I'm with you. She doesn't show much emotion. Qui-Gon's off the hook. He's not supposed to show emotion.
Listen, Qui-Gon is allowed to bet some money on the side on the Celtics to win the title and stuff like just let him be a fan of something.
Qui-Gon was spending all of his emotion on secret glances between him and Shmi.
Him and Shmi, man.
He didn't have any.
What's going on underneath that robe? That's my question. All right, so we have touched
lightsaber.
Nope. we have touched on the pod race. We need to talk a little bit. Go ahead.
Hold on. Pod race.
Yeah.
The writing of the pod race is incredible.
Yeah, I just said that.
No, but even just like the structure of it, right? Lap number 1, Anakin gets stuck, and we follow everybody else and learn the dangers of the course. Lap number 2, we spend the whole time between Sebulba, destroying his opponents, and Anakin, showing off how skilled he is and, proving all the things that were said about him, that he's this great, precocious pod racer. And then lap 3 is the showdown.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just incredible writing of an action scene.
Yeah.
And I think that's George Lucas for me. Like he has lots of flaws. He has a lot of places where he's like a C to a B+ director. But his action sequences, I think he is a legendary all-time Hall of Fame director. And the pod race is that in this film.
For sure. Like, no notes on that, man. Okay, I do want to talk CGI for a second, because I feel like I've said this. I am a nerd and I'm very weird, and I acknowledge this, but like, I feel like every digital CGI house has their kind of house style of, like, when you're watching Lord of the Rings, like, what works really well from Weta Digital. You know what they're good at.
Yes.
Like,
yep.
The translucency of the skin on Gollum is like next level stuff that no one else was doing. When you watch like Pixar, you know what Pixar is really good at? Like, even from the get-go in Toy Story.
The Piper short?
Oh yeah. Photorealistic. But like even in the original Toy Story, where the humans look horrifying, like their ability to replicate textures and wood grains and things like that, it's next level. Industrial Light and Magic, there has always been something weird to me about their CGI. It never ever fully works for me. And like the things just seem rubbery, and they don't seem like they're actually like part of the environment. They feel like they're slapped in front, like they have a completed shot, and instead of making the thing seem like it's a part of the depth of the shot, it just seems like they held a puppet up in front of it. Like, it doesn't always work for me. But what I will say, Brad, in favor of this movie, is that Lucas was doing a lot of on-location shooting. And by episode 3, you've got environments that are like, it's just a guy on a blue screen and everything is CGI. In this movie in particular, especially like that final battle scene where you've got like the droid army kind of coming over the hill, it's like, it sounds stupid to be like, oh, that's a real hill. But I love the way that the camera shots are designed to take place in a real world setting. And then the CGI is placed into that real world setting instead of just, we're going to construct everything inside of a computer. Because I think this movie could look a hell of a lot worse than it does if George was using his episode 3 mindset here.
Sure. I mean, I'll say this about the CGI. What year did Shrek come out? 2001? 2002? Tell me that this doesn't look 10 times better than Shrek's CGI.
Sure. Like, yeah. Although, if you put Shrek in this movie, he would probably be a believable character on Naboo.
Shut up, Bob. Get the heck out of here. Here's the deal with the CGI. I think that the advancement of technology has done this movie no favors. I think that in 1999, it looked pretty solid. I'm not going to say it was like great, but I think it looked pretty good in 99, and it advanced the medium of CGI in important ways. And I say that as somebody who hates CGI. I think it's garbage. I think in this movie it's okay. I think in the second and third film it gets kind of ridiculous. Mm-hmm. And I think for the same reason that you said, like you can still tell there's a tactile nature to a lot of this movie that's really beautiful. And I think that the other reason I'm kind of okay with the CGI is that so many of the wide shots of Naboo and Tatooine and Coruscant are just gorgeous. Like they are immaculately beautiful shots of these planets, and it sets up just this really cool world that Lucas is inhabiting with all these weird creatures. And I think that 4K TVs and even like Blu-rays to a point, like they don't do the aging of this film any favors. I think that if you were watching this on a VHS or an early DVD in like 2001, I don't think your complaints about the CGI would be as pronounced.
All right, cool. Fair point.
And that's not me saying that you're wrong. I just think that
No. I'm with you, man. Yeah. I mean, listen, Jurassic Park looked years ahead of its time on DVD and VHS, and now on 4K, it's like, oh yeah, like this is starting to finally look old. You know what I mean?
Yeah, 100%. But also,
Jurassic Park.
I'm saying this during a Star Wars review, Bob. Jurassic Park is a perfect movie.
It's a perfect movie.
It's so good.
All right, Brad, it is time for us to get to our last segment of the day, which we call Let's Make It a Double.
We're near the end of the episode, so thanks for listening to the Film and Whiskey Show. Let's pair another film with this one, even if it's a struggle. It's our final segment of the day, now let's make it a double.
Let's Make It a Double is the part of the podcast where we pick a movie to pair up with this one to make the perfect double feature. Brad, would you like to go first, or do you want me to go first?
Bob, of all the weeks, I literally didn't even know that we did this segment. Like, that's how unprepared I am.
Well, it's really funny that you finally decided to go to a movie and see Dune, because I am going to pair this movie with the first Dune, not the second one. I think it would be unfair to pair it with the second one, because I think the first Dune is significantly more flawed than Dune 2.
Agreed.
I just, when I'm thinking about world-building sci-fi epics that take place mostly on sand, it really limits my choices here. But I think that you could do a heck of a lot worse than looking at what Lucas built in his, and I don't mean this in a bad way. It's a very kid-friendly, ultimately optimistic, bright, pretty happy movie versus like what Denis Villeneuve is doing with Dune, which is a huge downer of a series. Like, do you know what I mean? And I think it'd be like a fun pairing in that, like, you can see what audiences wanted in 1999 and what they responded to versus what they responded to in 2019 or whenever the hell Dune came out. So, yeah, man, that's my pick. Dune 1 and Star Wars 1.
Yeah, I think that's actually a great pick, Bob. I am going to jump back about 5 years from The Phantom Menace, and I'm going to pick a movie that I think thematically and stylistically feels somewhat similar in the sense of adventure and fun that it brings. I'm going to pick 1994's Stargate. I think that would be a really, such a fun movie. I think it would be a really fun evening of like 90s cinema to just sit down and enjoy Stargate and Star Wars.
Mm-hmm. Brad, I have a quiz, a pop quiz for you. How many Oscars do you think that episode 1 was nominated for?
Oh, I am gonna guess. Can I go like through a few categories?
Sure.
Maybe. This is a reach. Maybe best supporting actor for Liam Neeson. Partially, I guess that because Liam's like established on the scene. I'm guessing best visual effects, best sound effects, or sound design. Is it sound design? Is that the
they actually
Oscar?
had two categories for sound back then. There was sound effects editing, and then there was just best sound.
Oh, I would guess they'd be nominated for both. I don't know. We'll say 2. Thinking through that, I'm guessing like 4 to 6, something in that range.
3, and it went 0 for 3, Brad. Because it was going up against a little movie that used the CGI significantly better called The Matrix.
Ooh.
The Matrix won for best visual effects, it won for best sound, and it won for best sound effects editing. So it lost to the same movie in all 3 categories.
See, I will say an avid 10 out of 10 love. Like, I think that The Matrix might be the best science fiction movie of all time. I love that movie. I don't actually qualify Star Wars as science fiction, but that's just me being a genreist. I would say, loving The Matrix, I think that the sound design, whatever the more technical version of sound is, I think that Star Wars is better. There's just so much beauty to the sound design in this film. Like, even beyond the pod race, which I think is a masterclass in sound design, there's just so many incredible moments of lightsabers and the sounds of the blasters on the ships. Man. Yeah, the sound design in this is better than The Matrix. Overall score, maybe not. But you got Duel of the Fates, Bob.
You do have Duel of the Fates, Brad. That's true. 99,
man.
What a year for movies. I'm going to run down a couple here, Brad. American Beauty wins Best Picture. Also competing in Best Picture, you've got The Cider House Rules, Green Mile, The Insider, and The Sixth Sense. You've got movies such as, let's go through some of these. Hilary Swank wins her Oscar for Boys Don't Cry. Angelina Jolie wins Best Supporting Actress for Girl Interrupted. Being John Malkovich comes out this year. Paul Thomas Anderson's Magnolia. You've got, let's see, what else? Disney comes out with Tarzan this year. It's just a really, really great year. Fight Club comes out this year. What a great year for movies, man.
Your favorite film of the year.
My favorite film. You even have a nomination here for Best Makeup for the second Austin Powers movie. And a Best Sound nomination for The Mummy, which I freaking rock with, man. I love The Mummy.
I have not seen any of the Austin Powers movies, and I have not seen The Mummy.
Oh, man. Now, no wonder why you like this movie so much, Brad. We've got to expose you to good cinema here. Brad, it's time for final scores. I'm going to go first because you're going to hate me. I told you this the other day, though. Like, I told you I was falling somewhere between a 5 and a 6 on this movie. And it is an infuriating movie to score because I don't dislike it. But there are just so many stretches of this movie that I think are just actively bad, coupled with many sequences of some of the best sci-fi and action filmmaking I have ever seen. And it just is just thrown together in a pot and makes the most weird tasting stew I've ever encountered. It's delicious. Like, man, I'm going to give it I want to say 5.5. I'm not going to give it a 5.5. And the only reason why is because we also gave Back to the Future 5.5s across the board. And I don't want to insinuate that I like this movie on the same level as that. So I'm going to give it a 6 out of 10. But no higher.
That's disappointing. I think you gave the original Star Wars like a 7 out of 10, which is bonkers. I'm at a 9 out of 10, Bob.
Okay.
I think that this film has so much going for it. There's so much charm. If you want to subscribe to like auteur theory, I think that Lucas is doing exactly what he wants to do here to set up the rest of the series. Like, so many fans were disappointed with the Phantom Menace because it featured a child Anakin. And I think that when you look at the series as a whole, it works beautifully because you have that innocence and that childlike nature stamped in your memory. Because who could ever forget Jake Lloyd saying yippee? Right? Like, it's stamped in your memory.
Now this is pod racing.
Oh, man.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. I don't even care that he says that. I'm like, good for you, man.
I think that overall, Lucas did exactly what he wanted to here. The sound design is incredible. The worlds that you visit are gorgeous and beautiful. The even just the introduction of the Gungans and the Naboo as like every other planet you've ever been to is just like aliens and humans coexisting, and you don't really know, like, are any of these natives to the world, or are they just all transplants? Like, here for the first time you get, like, no, the Naboo are from here, and the Gungans are from here, and they've coexisted, you know, very tenuously for centuries, and you feel that history. There's just so much going on here that's just wonderful and fun, and I love it, and it's a 9 out of 10.
All right, folks, there you have it. Brad has completely gone off the rails and given this movie a 9 out of 10. I'm giving it a 6 out of 10, and I really regret not giving it the 5.5 that it deserved. So we are coming to a 7.5 on average, but we'd like to know what you think. Where are you landing on The Phantom Menace 25 years after its release? You can let us know on all of our social media platforms, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, or YouTube at Film Whiskey.
Or you can give us a follow on Discord. We are on there every single day talking to you guys, the fans of the Film and Whiskey podcast. So if you'd like to join the conversation, you can find a link at the end of every single one of our show notes.
Next week, Brad, a film that we will be united in our hatred for, I'm predicting, the truly god-awful Ron Howard film, How the Grinch Stole Christmas. We're watching this literally the week of Easter, so we are way off in our timing on this one, but there's no time like the present to review whatever this is, Brett. So join us next week for that. But until then, I'm Bob Book.
I'm Brad G.
And we'll see you next time.